Hey guys, welcome to the Lost Boys to Found Fathers podcast. This is Will Haycox. I'm here with Gabriel O'Sullivan. We are here making this podcast for the glory of the Lord and just to encourage men to be better fathers, better husbands, and just better believers. This is a podcast for men who have lost children by men who have lost children. And I want to just jump right into it. We've last couple episodes we've covered the story of the loss of my son Gabriel, and Gabe here asked me some questions to just kind of follow up on that. So make sure you go back and listen to episodes 2 and 3, and obviously we hope you listen to 1 to get the why of this podcast while we're doing it. We want to jump right into it. On episode 4 here, we want to go into my co-host Gabriel O'Sullivan's story of loss of his little girls.
Thank you, Will. So my wife and I, Ryan, we have been together for quite a while. We met in middle school, and then were just friends for a couple of years, and then started dating in high school right before our junior year. And we've been together ever since. Dated for about 7 years, got married in 2001. So we are about to celebrate our 20th year of marriage, which is really hard
Awesome.
to believe.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember being on our honeymoon, and there were these people at the resort where we were, and I remember them saying they were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, and I just remember thinking, like, man, they look so old. They look so ancient, and now I'm gonna be that guy. Wherever we go, there's gonna be some newly wed couple, and we're going to be the old people. So, well, I will. My wife's not. She's not old. She's still young. So yeah, we've been together for a long time. My wife always wanted to be a mom. I mean, she went to college, got her accounting degree, got her CPA, got her master's in accounting, but her heart was never to be a businesswoman. It was always to be a mom. And so that was awesome, so thankful to have a wife that wanted to have kids, and I did too, wanted to have children, and we started, down that journey, we down that road of trying to get pregnant, and it just wasn't going real easy for us. We waited a couple years, we were married for a couple years before we started trying, and it just wasn't going well. That's basically all I can say, and ended up where we were like, all right, is it time to try something? And so we were like, all right, let's go to the fertility doctor. Just went straight there. Didn't even go to her OB or anything first, because I was like, they're probably going to send you there, so let's just go anyway. So we went to a fertility doctor, did some blood tests and whatever, and other tests, and got on a medication that was supposed to help develop, basically, eggs appropriately, because she was diagnosed with this thing called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, where her eggs just kind of weren't developing properly. Like, they were a bunch of them, but they weren't, I guess, coming to maturation to be able to maybe, be fertilized. And so he put us on this medication. He said this will probably help. He was like, it's should help. We'll see. Said there's a less than 1% chance of the woman developing multiples with this medication. And we're like, okay, that's cool. We'd always kind of dreamed, my wife had always dreamed that she was going to, of having twins. I don't really know why. There wasn't that history of that in her family. She just thought that'd be super cool. And so we were like, all right, let's go. So first month, bam, we're pregnant. And super excited. I remember I was actually here at the office when she came in there and told me that she was pregnant, and it was just exciting news. We're super pumped up. So a couple weeks later, we go back to the fertility doctor, and he's like, all right, cool, congratulations, do an ultrasound, let's see what's going on, make sure everything's going well. So take an ultrasound, and sure enough, we were pregnant, and we were pregnant with twins. And man, that was just so cool, because it was like this dream that my wife had always had. It was like now, like a reality. And so we were super excited about that. And so while he's sitting there talking to us, still kind of doing the ultrasound, nurse is in there in the room with us, And he was like, hey, move that wand over just a little bit, talking to the nurse. And we were like, okay, he looked a little concerned, I guess would be the way to say it. And he was like, actually, you were pregnant with triplets. And man, let me just say that, like, we kind of both went from like elated excitement to almost like panic, and fear. Not from a standpoint of like thinking like anything bad was going to happen medically, but just like, holy moly, like triplets, like she's going to carry 3 babies in it. And then like, how are we going to handle that? Like, you're 20 something years old and you get pregnant, you're a little freaked out anyway, but excited. And then twins and then triplets. So we were like, hey, look around a little bit more, brother. Like, make sure, let's see what's going on.
4 or 5 in there.
Yeah, that's right. Just wanted to be sure. And so sure enough, man, we're in that less than 1% category that got pregnant with multiples, on our first go round. And, man, it was surreal. It was, we were dumbfounded, that's the best way, like kind of dumbstruck, I just remember us kind of having those wide-eyed, like, panic, like, what in the world? How are we going to take care of 3 kids? Me as the provider, I'm already immediately thinking, man, that's 3 mouths to feed, that's 3 colleges to pay for, that's 3 cars to pay for. Or then I started thinking, no, 1 car they're going to share. Well, Monday you drive, Tuesday you drive, Wednesday you drive, And then I'm like, what if they're all girls? That's 3 weddings and all that stuff. And so before we left, I remember him saying, he was like, you're a small-framed woman. He was like, it's going to be really difficult for you to carry these three babies because you're so little. And we didn't think anything about that. We were just like, yeah, whatever, man, God's favor's with us. We're going to be fine. And he said, I want to offer you the option to, basically downsize this pregnancy. He was like, you may want to choose to essentially end the lives of one of these kids or 2 of these kids if you think that 2 is too many, then 3 or they 1, or and immediately we were just like, no way, brother, like we can't imagine like making that choice. Like, how do you choose? Like, yes, I want to basically kill this kid but not this kid. We couldn't do it. We were just like, look, we think God's favor's on us, we're gonna be good to go, and we're gonna figure it out. Like, she's gonna be fine. So that's what we decided. We're going with it. So I remember getting in the car and we were both like sat in the car, like neither one of us talking, like looking straight ahead, like, what do we do? And so then we started the phone calls, man, just telling everybody, hey, we're pregnant, and guess what? We got triplets. So exciting times for sure. So, man, we just, we're starting to think and starting to prepare. Actually, started looking for another house because we're like, all right, the house we're in is not going to, like, it's not going to suffice for a room with 3 cribs in it and that kind of thing. And fast forward several, I guess months down the road, and they're like, hey, you want to find out what you're having? And my wife is the ultimate planner, which is a blessing because I'm ultimately not a planner. And she was like, yes, we want to find out what we're having so we can figure out what color the nursery is going to be and what the bed sheets are going to be like, what kind of clothes we need to get, all this stuff. And so we go and they do the ultrasound to find out the sex of the baby. And ultrasound number 1, it's a girl. It's like, cool, got a little girl. Ultrasound, look over at number 2, baby number 2, it's a girl. Okay, awesome, 2 girls. All right, rolling a dice for that 3rd one. It's gotta be a little boy in there. Ultrasound number 3, it's another girl, right? So now we're having 3 girls. So now again, I'm all into full freak out mode, thinking about I've got to pay for 3 weddings. Like, maybe they can join some cult and I'll just get married at the same time, or something like that to save some money. But super excited, man. Super excited, just thinking, holy moly, I'm going to be the father of these 3 beautiful girls. I'm already starting to think, just about how beautiful they're going to be and, like how crazy that's going to be. Like, pushing them through the mall in their little triplet stroller and I'm seeing 3 Barbie Jeeps, lined up in the garage and, and all this stuff. And so we're super excited. And, I remember that's just the way it was. So we start looking for all girly stuff and starting to paint the nursery and, and looking for bed sheets and whatnot. And everything's going great, man. And then I'm just working. She gets put on bed rest about 20 weeks because she's just, at 20 weeks, she's kind of like the size of like full term, just from the standpoint of she got 3 babies in her belly, right? And so her high risk pregnancy doctor was like, all right, you got to go on bed rest. You got to stop work, go home. It's like you just got to lay down most of the day. You can get up and walk around for a couple hours a day, but that's it. So she's doing it, man. Just whatever she's got to do. Everything he says to do, she's doing. So I get a phone call Friday afternoon at work. It's like February 24th, 25th, something like that, 2005. And she's just sobbing. And I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, I started feeling this pressure like last night. And the night before, we had went to dinner. Like, I got off work and met her out at this little Italian place we'd go to eat. And she didn't, her face, she didn't look great. Like, I just tell in her face, she didn't feel so good. I was like, what's the matter? She's like, I don't know, I just felt a little weird today. She's like, I had like this little pressure kind of down in my abdomen. She's like, but call my daughter. She says it's probably fine or whatever. And I was like, all right. I was like, you want to go home now? I'll be okay. So that night we go home, and yeah, she seemed to be okay. But as the next day went on, she just kind of kept feeling that same feeling, and so she's like, I gotta go to the doctor and get checked out. She was like, yeah, I came to the doctor. She's sobbing again. I'm on the phone, and so I'm already like heading out the door. At this point, like getting my keys and going to the car. She's like, I'm at the OB's office. He said that I'm in preterm labor, and I got to go to the hospital right now. You need to come pick me up. So she's only 25 weeks, give or take. Maybe a little bit less than 25 weeks pregnant this time, so not a good situation when you're supposed to be pregnant for another 4 months, right? The high-risk doctor always told us he just wanted us to at least get to like 32 weeks, right? So we're still 7 weeks out from where he said he wanted the babies. And so that's not a good situation, so I go to the OB's office, go get her, take her to the hospital. They give us a little sheet of paper. They're like, hey, just show this to the people when you get up to the desk on the labor and delivery floor. So we go in, go upstairs. I give the paper to the lady, and she's like, actually no, forgive me, I didn't give it to her first. She just looked at us like, why are you here? And I was like, her doctor's office didn't call you? They're like, no. What are you doing here? We're like, she is apparently in preterm labor, and they told us to just come up here. And so I gave them this paper, and immediately when I gave her the paper, the nurse looked at it, and like her eyes got huge, and she was like, okay, come with me. So immediately this whirlwind starts of putting my wife in this triage room. These nurses come in, and then like they're like, all right, we got to give you this shot to help develop the baby's lungs, because you're in preterm labor, and we've got to get their lungs developed as quickly as possible. We've got to try to keep you pregnant as long as possible. It's like a whirlwind of nurses coming in, sticking my wife with stuff, and then like these nursing students come in, so like 10 nursing students come in this room. They're all watching, and man, it was crazy. It's like we were part of like this 3-ring circus all of a sudden. So a lot of emotion, a lot of adrenaline, for my wife, and certainly for me too. And I just remember one of the nurses saying, you are now a permanent resident of Spartanburg Regional Medical Center until these babies are born, which we hope is in about 7 weeks. And so, man, that was like, what is happening, right now? We go from eating dinner the night before to this. And so, yeah, sure enough, man, she had started to dilate, started going to preterm labor, and they admitted her and immediately hooked her up to these medications that were supposed to, like, slow down contractions, end up putting her in a bed that they had her inverted. They call it in Trendelenburg position. So she's like literally kind of like her head is below her feet. So she's kind of slightly with her feet above her head, which is a weird position to be in, I'm sure, because now you got the blood kind of rushing to your head. And man, that was our first day. That was our first couple hours there. So it was a rough few days, trying to keep her pregnant, basically, trying to not let the labor continue. And unfortunately, long story short, she delivered too early. Ended up that the one baby just started coming, and they were like, okay, we got a couple options. You can deliver this baby and try to leave the other two inside, we don't know if that'll happen or not, and so she ended up, we ended up deciding she had a C-section and delivered all three. So they're about 25 weeks pregnant, or they are 25 weeks old, into term out of 40 weeks, and obviously, very, 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 very premature. So they go in, obviously admitted into the NICU. So we had three daughters, Reese, Vivian, and Sophia. I can't remember the exact weights. They were 1.5, 1.7, and 1.9.
If I can stop you for just a second, Gabe, what was her birth date?
Thank you. March 1st, 2005. So we were actually just in the hospital for about 5 days, before she ended up delivering instead of 7 weeks. And again, I detailed a lot more of that story and kind of what we went through in the book, in our book that will be done. But yeah, March 1st, 2005, thank you, was her birthday. And so certainly March 1st, special date for us, for sure. And so they were little, 1.5, 1.7, 1.9. They're in the NICU. Honestly, man, that place is, it's amazing what they do. And, met lots of people since then that their kids were born at the same gestation time and same weight and that kind of thing, and kind of made it out, of the NICU. Unfortunately, we weren't that, lucky. But Reese, she only lived a day. She coded a couple times. Just her, at that age, man, stuff's just not working right, and so her heart just kind of quit working. We had to witness her like getting epinephrine shots right into her heart and doing chest compressions, and that was crazy. And she unfortunately passed away the next day. Same situation happened again, and they were like, "Look, we can do the epinephrine shots again, but her body's just been so damaged and without oxygen for so long, like it'll only like give her a few more days or hours, And we were like, "Well, just not put her through that again," because it was very traumatic looking for sure. So she passed away then. After that, we had to, prepare for a funeral for our infant, and that wasn't a lot of fun. And I remember preparing for her funeral, and Vivian, she was not doing well. She had kind of had some of the same issues there with her, like potassium dropping, heart challenges. And I remember the funeral director guy saying, like, "Do you want to just wait? You just want to wait a few days before we, have the funeral, because what if your other one, passes, and then you don't have to have the expense of going through two funerals there. We just all do them at the same time." And man, we were like, "No," because we're holding out hope, she's gonna be fine. So March 5th, 2005, we buried Reese. Then a few weeks later, unfortunately, Vivian, she ends up developing a brain bleed, and she just kind of deteriorates from there. She ends up not making it, gets an infection, really affects her kidneys, and her body just shuts down. So then, like March 21st, Vivian passes away. So same deal, I have to go back to the funeral home. Same process, get another casket, the whole thing. A few days later, I had a funeral for Vivian. And Sophia is still in the hospital. My wife is, not working. Obviously, she's up at the hospital at the NICU every waking minute that they'll let her be there. Kind of the way our days would go. I'd wake up about 6. I'd get up. I was going back to work after that. Like that next couple of days after we buried Reese, I was just like, okay, I can't stay at work anymore right now. I got to go back to work. And so I get up at 6, go up to the hospital for a couple hours, not for a couple hours. I would get to go to the hospital for about 45 minutes, from like 8 to 8:45, get in the car, go to work. At lunch, I'd go back up there, and my wife would, as soon as she got up, she'd just go up there and just sit by the girls. And now we're talking about just Sophia, all day. Just sit by her little incubator crib thing. And Sophia's coming along, man. She's doing okay. It's a slow process. They tell her, she has kind of some ups and downs, some bumps in the road, but like things are looking pretty good. So now we're, late March into April. She's still doing pretty good. She's growing. Now we're into May. Still doing pretty good, looking pretty good. She's growing. Get to about the third week of May, into third week of May of, again, 2005. And Sophia's also had a brain bleed, but it looks like it's going to resolve and like self-heal, and so things are looking good. And then she gets an infection, and her kidneys shut down. And within a few days, she passes away as well. So she ends up passing on May 22nd, 2005. And so, now we are, really devastated, obviously. All three of our children have been born. We're thankful for them and the time we spent with them, but now they've all passed as well. And now we got to go back, and have another funeral, which would be our last. And that was difficult. So within that few months, we had one that lived a day, one that lived 3 weeks, one that lived 3 months, and thankfully they're all able to be buried together, actually in the same grave. 3 separate caskets, and sad situation, obviously, but through God's grace, about a little while later, man, we get pregnant again. And this time it's a single baby, no fertility meds. It just kind of happened. And our daughter Avery was born on November 27th, 2006. So about a year and a half later. She had kind of a rocky start. Wife had a tough pregnancy with her as well. But she had to spend a couple days in the special care nursery because of some lung issues. But man, she's great, 14 years old now. I think she's a genius. She's beautiful. Plays guitar, plays basketball, plays soccer. She's just amazing. Loves the Lord, following Him. A little while after that, we got pregnant again in 2008. And so Avery was about a year and a half old, and super pumped about that. It was one of those things where we were kind of like scared, excited, scared at the same time. And unfortunately, we ended up miscarrying at about 10 weeks with that child. Just a routine OB visit to make sure everything was good. And went in and was like, we're not finding a heartbeat this time. And so wife had to have a DNC for that, so that was tough. That kind of led us down a path of thinking about, hey, do we get pregnant again or not? And we decided to not go that route, but we do have 2 other children who we have adopted, and they are a blessing. So that's our story. Yeah, and it looks like you've been making some notes over there, so
Mm-hmm.
let you, if you want to, get into some questions.
Yeah, man, thanks for sharing that. The first question that popped up as you were talking there near the beginning was something that we didn't really get into with Hannah and I's story, but we also went through infertility. We had to go to an endocrinologist and a just whatever, a fertility doctor, and I was just wondering if you would kind of talk about having gone through that infertility and then it working. How does that kind of change the whole experience of losing a child? Of like, this is not just like every child is a blessing, of course, but this is not just you and your wife were hoping to get pregnant, things were cool, normal, and you got pregnant and you were just excited. Like you worked for this baby, you prayed, you spent a lot more time anguishing over you couldn't get pregnant and you wanted to. How does that change the whole experience of then losing a child? And did that change how you trust God, through that infertility experience? And then for Hannah and I, it was kind of, we look forward to this, we prayed for this, and then it ultimately still didn't work out even after the year of trying.
Yeah, I would say initially, there was guilt, and honestly, it probably still is to some degree, of thinking like, should I have just trusted God and His timing more than jumping into fertility meds? You know, because number one, I'm a chiropractor, so, you know, I'm all about natural stuff anyway. And the fact that I was like, okay, after like 2 years of trying and not getting pregnant, and then like, okay, we got to go this medical route. Like, I felt kind of guilt from a professional standpoint, you know, but also from a spiritual standpoint of like, man, I should have just trusted God, because if I had trusted him with the timing of this pregnancy and not jumped the gun and taken matters into my own hands, so to speak, then maybe we wouldn't have gone through, maybe our girls wouldn't have suffered like they suffered, you know, maybe my wife wouldn't have suffered like she suffered. And so there was that for sure. But I think moving past that, you know, after we did have the girls and it didn't work out, you know, I think we had two thoughts. One was, okay, we're probably not going to go the fertility route again. Like, not going to happen, just because we were the less than 1%, right?
Yeah.
And we're okay, we're going to just trust God for the next go round, you know, and see that where that leads us. But number two, I think it, you know, for us, in a sense that it did work out in that, yes, we lost them because of the fact probably that we took fertility medication that made her get pregnant with 3 babies, you know. But we at least got pregnant, you know. Like, I think how many friends that we have and people have I known throughout the years that tried and never even get to carry a baby, you know, much. And we actually saw our children, you know. I didn't get to hold Reese until she had passed, you know. I did get to hold Vivian while she was alive, did get to hold Sophia while she was alive, you know. And so that was a blessing to be able to see them, you know, to be pregnant, number one, and then to see them, you know. And so we were thankful for that, you know, that we at least had that opportunity. And so it didn't, you know, obviously it didn't deter us from trying to get pregnant again, even though that was a terrible experience. And, you know, just like y'all went through, it's like, okay, it was an awful experience, but hey, round 2, let's go again, you know, because when we started looking back, we see that, my goodness, you know, people throughout history have suffered child loss, and they keep going too, and we had to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's similar to how Hannah and I felt, that we, like you said, we still ask those questions. Like, if we had just trusted God, would things have been different? Would we have to go through this? Does something in that fertility treatment change your body, change your, you know, we didn't have multiples, we just had Gabriel, but, you know, we felt that same guilt. And I think I would imagine that's probably natural for anyone to feel that, you know, you kind of take things into your own hands, and then when things don't work out, you're naturally just going to say, you know, what could I have done differently? So I certainly think that's true. And I think there's, like you said, you know, sometimes medicine maybe can go too far. There's some things going on out there that are a little crazy, you know, with some embryos and things like that. But I think to a certain extent, you know, the Lord has blessed humankind with wisdom, and I think it is a gift that people who aren't able to get pregnant naturally are able to through medical technology.
That's right.
So yeah, I agree with you. But there's always that guilt,
and that's probably a stage of grief, you know, like if you look at it. So
I wanted to ask you too, similar to what you asked me, kind of in that moment where things went from everything's good, we're trucking along, you know, we're halfway through, to something's wrong, and then you get to the hospital and it's like something's really wrong, and then you get to the point where she's in labor, like she's actively in labor and they're coming. Kind of, what did you go through? The same feelings of shock? Like, what was your experience, and what did you do in that moment? Did you have the same, like, switch flip kind of time where you were, okay, I got to do this for my wife, I've got to get back to work, I've got to, you know, do these things? Or did you have a different experience where you kind of rested in that longer? And kind of, what did that look like?
Yeah, I think adrenaline is the best way to describe it, man. Because we, like, one night we're you know, whatever it was, February 28th, I guess. They're like, hey, she started not doing well, my wife. She started having some, like, swelling of her lungs because of that position they had her in for so long. And they were like, okay, now it's either we save the babies or we save you. And as I'm like, we're saving my wife, right? Like, we're going to trust in your medical knowledge to figure out how you're going to save our kids over there in the NICU, right? We got to save her, right? So we set her up in set her up so her lungs would drain. They give her some
Yeah.
medication, make her lungs drain, and then we're like, God. So we got one doctor that's coming in, like this older, probably the same dude. I'm not gonna say his name, but just based on what you're telling me, maybe the same guy. And he was like, okay, we need to go ahead and deliver these babies tonight because they're going to be born prematurely. Whether we do it tonight or tomorrow, it's inconsequential. We need to do it now. And then this other doctor, the neonatologist, was like, don't even think about that. You need to give these babies every other chance that they can to stay in the womb longer. What if her body gets out of labor and doesn't deliver, and then you've basically given your children a death sentence? So man, a lot of turmoil. Like, what do we do? You know, so we prayed about it, and ultimately came to the decision, all right, we're not going to deliver. We're going to just let nature take its course, right? And so we go to bed, sleep like babies that night, which is great. And woke up the next morning, everything's good. Like, I go out of the room to, I don't know, go to the restroom or like go get a muffin or something, I can't remember. And I come back in, and my wife's like, something's not right. And she was like in labor, right? And so immediately it's like this adrenaline kicks in. And so yes, it became a very like protective thing. Like I run out in the hallway and I'm like, you know, like finding a nurse, like, get in here right now. She says something's going on. She's in labor, you know. So then the nurse comes in, kind of calm, and as soon as she checks, she's like, oh shoot, you know, yeah. So the wheels start turning, and so so it was adrenaline, dude. I was just shaking, like you know, like I couldn't control it, that kind of thing. And then thereafter, you know, it was like, all right, what can I do? I've got to take care of these kids. I've got to take care of my wife too, you know. And so that's the way it was, you know, for the next. Well, it's the way it's been for the last 16 years, you know. Now, really, so 16 years was just, what can I do to protect her? What can I do to comfort her? What can I do to, you know, take care of my kids too?
Yeah. What was your relationship with God like when, like that moment, like when you were, before anything was happening with your girls, like what was your relationship with God like, and where were you in your walk?
Yeah, I think it was good. I had just been, you know, given my life to him at a young age, and had kind of been all over the place, you know, with it, as far as like growing, not growing, that kind of thing in my faith. But I think that consistently, you know, in my life, I had spent time with the Lord in prayer, reading the Word, you know, that, and so I had that good base. I mixed some of that with, I think, kind of a wrong view of God and of Scripture, of that it was like a lot of this if-then mentality, like if I follow you, then you will bless me kind of thing. I don't know, like word of faith movement kind of stuff, whatever. And so when all this went down and all of a sudden like stuff's not going like I had been praying for it to go, it was really like faith shaking, because not because God had done anything wrong, because he had moved, but because my understanding of him had now completely changed. He wasn't this genie in a bottle that I just prayed to and he makes everything perfect and right. I mean, man, we were living a dream. We were 20-something years old, had great jobs, great careers, you know, house, cars, like triplet babies on the way, like everything was just like, you know, phenomenal. And then all of a sudden it's not, you know. And so like I was shaken to the core at my faith because I did not have a complete and correct understanding of God, you know. And so, but I had an understanding of him, and I had a relationship with him. And so because of that, he was able to, over time, help me to see and understand, I'll say, the error of my understanding about him. And that's honestly a lot of where that book came out of, that we wrote, because it was me kind of wrestling through those theological questions of, you know, that I had, you know, during those days in the hospital, and then during those days when our girls were in the NICU, and then during those days after our girls had passed away, you know. And so I was thankful for that base of a relationship and that knowledge of Scripture that I had, because God was able to bring that back to my mind and be like, okay, remember this? This is how you took it, but this is how it actually, what I really meant by it. Yeah. And that was helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's something we should get into in another episode, just the understanding of God, because I don't think you are alone in feeling that way about God in our culture now. I think that's a thing that it's real easy to grow up, and I've felt that way at times. So it's like you said, God's a genie in a bottle. I do all the right things, and good things are going to come to me. And I think that's an easy misunderstanding to make in our culture. And yeah, that'd be a great thing to go into. Just a couple other things here. I imagine that you felt helpless like I did when we found out about Gabriel. How did you handle that feeling of helplessness when your girls were in the NICU? They're in. We'll get into the experience with my daughter that was just born, but it was not as critical, but it was similar in that she's in a little pod. They're doing everything for her, all these machines and things like that. And you feel like, you see your child suffering, or you see your child just in a point where you want to make things better, but you can't. How did you handle that helplessness? Were you communicating with your wife and talking through that together? Did you communicate with your pastor, with your friends, or was it prayer, a combination of all that?
Yeah, definitely a combination. I mean, certainly, I was getting up at 6 in the morning, spend some time in prayer, just kind of get me ready for the day, and that was helpful. And then my wife and I would definitely talk every chance that we got. Most of the time our talks were going to be in the evening on the way home from the hospital. We would get home about midnight, crash and do it again the next day kind of thing. And so we would have an opportunity to talk. And just having her there was a blessing, because she was like, even though she wasn't like administering the medication, changing the IVs, doing all this stuff that those nurses, amazing NICU nurses, were doing, she was still the mama. And like, she just intuitively like knew if something wasn't right with one of the girls, or like, or man, if they were laying on a clip, that was affecting them, like, she just knew. And she would be like, "Come here, nurse, fix this." And the nurse would be like, "Oh, she's fine." She's like, "No, she's not." And then nurse would be like, "Oh gosh, you're right," and so that was so cool. And yes, talked to my pastor and talked to pastors, I guess, a couple times. They would kind of make me talk to them because I didn't want to, but it was helpful, and just realizing that in that situation, man, they were just in God's hands, because there was nothing I could do. They were in God's hands, and they were in the hands of the doctors and nurses at the NICU. And it's one of those things that, God had his plan, and his plan worked out. It's not really the way we wanted it to work out, but we trust that it was the best.
Yeah.
And that's where we had to kind of end on.
Yeah. Just one last question here I think is important going forward in the podcast, and going forward in life, and going forward in you and your wife's experience with having more children. Having gone through that loss, what fears did you have when thinking about getting pregnant again, when you got pregnant again, with those same thoughts, like it's all going to happen again? What was that experience like, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, man, we were scared. We weren't going to be able to get pregnant again, number one. And then when we did, we were like, oh boy, what's going to happen next? They're like, hey, they were like, it was probably a fluke that she went into, or not a fluke, but just because of the girth of those babies is why she probably went into preterm labor. And they were like, if you have a single baby, it's probably not going to happen. But precautionary, they went ahead and did, like, at 20 weeks, they put like stitches in her cervix, like to keep it closed, which was a super weird procedure for her to have done. And then she had to start having like some kind of shots, man. There was 17-hydroxyprogesterone, I remember that now. Every week she had to go and have this giant needle stuck in her leg at 20 weeks. And Avery was born at 37, so for 17 weeks straight, man, she went to the doctor and got this big giant needle stuck in her leg that was supposed to, there was some study that had been done that showed that was supposed to not allow women that had gone through preterm labor before to do it again, and so that whole time we're like, oh man, we hope this works, but then thinking, what's this medication doing to my wife? What's this medication doing to my baby? And reading some of the potential side effects, it was super scary. And then when Avery was born, like, we're like, hey, bring her to us, right? So she ended up having a C-section. We'll have her back to the room in 30 minutes or so. Man, it's an hour and a half. She's not with us. And we finally were like, where is she? What's the deal? Well, she's not breathing right. She's having some lung problems. We got her in a special care nursery. We were at a different hospital, so it wasn't a full-out NICU. They're like, we think she's going to be okay. But, man, like, now we got to go back and see our baby in another NICU setting, not in an incubator, but just in a nursery with oxygen on and all this stuff, and like IV. And man, we're like, oh man, like, here we go again, right? So it was a scary couple of days there, and then thankfully she was fine, and everything's been good to go. So yeah, we had all those fears, and something I've been kind of reading through now and through Romans 12:1-2 says, "Do not conform me longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Something that's been weighing on my heart recently is that I think we were also kind of projecting into that situation like a negative thing. Like, this is what our experiences were in the past with delivery and pregnancy, so it's probably going to be our experience in the future, right? And I think that, I'm not saying that we created that, but I'm just saying we didn't help that, and so it's like we have to, we really needed to like get out of that mindset of it's going to be bad, and realize that God's like, no, I've got your good at heart, not bad. Yeah, bad stuff happens, but just trust me that I've got your good in mind.
Yeah, stressing yourselves out unnecessarily, and like you said, maybe causing problems with the pregnancy with all that stress. And I know that's something that Hannah and I went through. The doctor say eliminate as much stress as possible, and having gone through that loss with Hannah and with this most recent pregnancy with us, we had some of the same feelings that like for Gabriel, everything was fine all the way up to 2 days before his due date. Everything was perfectly fine. We had an appointment with our midwife 2 days before we went to the hospital, and everything was great. Right, yeah. And so to go from that to he's gone, we had the same fears all the way along. We had checks and all this stuff, and everything was good. And then we had the fear we'd get all the way up to the day and something would be wrong with her. And so I think that's nearly impossible as a human to just say, well, I'll just eliminate stress. I won't worry about that.
Right.
But like you say, I think telling yourself, like intentionally choosing to trust the Lord and to cast your fears and your cares on Him and allow Him to carry you, I think is the only way you're going to eliminate that stress. We appreciate this time we've had together, Gabe.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your story and for being open and honest, and just for allowing the Lord to be glorified through your girls and through you and your wives' lives. And we appreciate all of y'all listening and sticking with us through this episode now, and we hope that you'll tune in. We hope that you will check out us on social media. You'll check out our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and you can search Lost Boys to Found Fathers and find us on all of those, and they're also linked together, so if you find us on one, you should be able to find us on the others. And also, Gabe mentioned that much more of the story of his girls is in his book, Thy Will Be Done, ? If you want to find it, it's thywillbedonebook.com. Thank you very much.